My name is Jim Ciotti, and I am an inspector with the Mahoning County Sheriff's Office. I work in the investigation division, and as part of that, I am the coordinator for the Mahoning Valley Homicide Task Force. As part of that, I work some cold cases and work on active homicide investigations on an on-call basis for agencies who request the assistance. I was familiar with this case from being a supervisor at BCI and all of the efforts that were done by the Sheriff's Office at that time. Eileen was found, she was stabbed. The actual, I think, cause of death was exsanguination, which is blood loss. And she was stabbed multiple times. Many of the stab wounds were superficial, with kind of like a coup de grace where her throat was cut. She was sexually assaulted and left in a desolate area.
What are you guys looking for?
We're looking for the contributor of the DNA. The DNA is the evidence. That is the contributor deposited that bit of evidence, what they call perimortem, which is around the time of death. The cold temperatures that day helped preserve that evidence. Subsequently, we find that person, we find at least who had sexual conduct with Eileen around the time of her death. Basically, what DNA technology has gone to is, he talked about CODIS, which is the Combined Offender DNA Identification System. So anybody arrested for certain crimes in the state of Ohio actually, has to have a swab taken, and it's put up into this database. It's put into the Ohio system, which is run by the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation, but it's also entered into the national database, which is run by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. In 1988, when this DNA sample was taken, the lab in California was not accredited by the FBI. Subsequently, all that work that they did could not be entered into the CODIS system. During the course of their working at BCI, they got a court order and uploaded it, I think, twice into the state system, which was a very limited search, but going out beyond that. What I can tell you is in 2021, we found additional DNA samples held by that lab in California. That was reworked, and it was able to be entered into the CODIS system. We didn't have any hits on it. Subsequently, what we did after that is this genetic genealogy, kind of what they did with the Golden State Killer, is kind of the big thing now. So we started looking at that, looking for family members, familial relationships, somebody who may have been, a brother, uncle, cousin to this contributor. Haven't had any luck with that. We also enlisted Colleen Fitzpatrick, who is a well-known forensic investigative genealogist, PhD, very well known in the field. We had her give us an analyzation on this. And what she comes up is what they call a haplogroup. So for those of you, or those of us who are interested in our background, you can take a swabbing and load it up to one of the DNA websites, and that's what she did. She kind of compared it, but we only have a very limited sample of DNA because it's a mixture. The subject or contributor's DNA is mixed in significantly with Eileen's. So most of the DNA that we're getting is Eileen's, and we're trying a new technique which requires them to test the entire genome. The CODIS is only about 22 spots on the genome, and I could be wrong on that, but this will test 380,000 spots on the genome. So we were able, if we can get that, but it's not being able to be deducted, is what the term is. So we're kind of there. We just, within the past month, had another sample tested by a lab who is working on that technology to break that down, to be able to separate off that. It could be 6 months, it could be 2 years. And we have a forensic genealogist with not only BCI working with us, but with the Porchlight Project, who has assisted in solving several cases here in the Youngstown area of missing persons, unidentified missing persons. The Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation, which is part of the Ohio Attorney General's office. They have established and had a DNA program there since about 1997. And that DNA program is very well regarded throughout the United States. So subsequently, we get DNA done for free by that. Unfortunately, this other specialty stuff is beyond that. The forensic investigative genealogists, their time, is different. They have one at BCI, but again, you have to have that information. So like with Colleen Fitzpatrick, we were able to develop what they call a haplogroup. And that was just from the Y DNA. Now that haplogroup would be much more definitive if we were able to get the entire genome. She was able to tell us that that haplogroup is Western European. The contributor of that is a Western European male, possibly in the Basque area of Europe, which could include Spain and France. So, but that's it. We have nothing more of that other than that right now. So,
do you think that over time this case will just generally be solved based on the technology?
Absolutely, it'll be solved based on the technology. I mean, people are putting in their DNA into the genetic genealogy sites all the time. Our problem is getting that reduction, being able to separate off Eileen's DNA from the contributor. We're close. We're very close.
What, if anything, do you need from the public?
Well, I still believe in working at the case the old-fashioned way. So if somebody knows something, call. One of the things that I've learned in working these cold cases, it doesn't matter what you think you know. We'd rather talk to you than not talk to you. It's not wasting our time, to hear that information. We may know things that, eliminate the information you're giving us, but it may also be something out there that might trip something. One of the things that we are talking about is, did Eileen have somebody else in her life? And, if you sit there and look at it from a behavioral standpoint, it could be sexually oriented homicide. It could be a crime of passion. Or it could be, maybe somebody she was seeing that nobody knows about, maybe a close friend of hers. And we know that her and Bob were possibly reconciling at that time. So that may have been the trigger in this case. Or it could have been somebody that saw her at a Giant Eagle, and followed her home, kind of thing. I work a case according to evidence, if that makes sense. So here's what I can tell you, that she was last seen at home, I believe on a Monday night, around 7 p.m. She was found Saturday. Beyond that, I can't tell you how she got there. There is speculation that she may have been killed there. I believe, I think that's possible, but I also think that it could be a dump site, So, I know that, I believe in following what the evidence tells us, if that makes sense. I think that the most important fact in this is that, we're not going to stop, okay? That we're going to work this case until we may not be able to solve it tomorrow, but someday it's going to get solved. And someday we're going to know who did this. Or we're at least going to have a family member of who did this. We look relatively recently. Look at what happened in our area. Relatively recently, there was the kid from Boardman. After 51 years, that case was solved. Look at the Golden State Killer. After 45 years, that was solved just based on this DNA technology that we're trying to utilize.
What is it you think a social media reach can bring that maybe hasn't been tried?
Probably the most important thing that the social media reach is that idea of somebody who knew her and hasn't thought about the case for years. You know, you go back, they may see this, they may think about, oh my man, she was seeing, you know, this guy, or I remember seeing somebody over by that apartment. Those are going to be the things in the traditional investigative means that we're going to utilize to try and link that. You know, what I'm hoping for is this to reach out. We get a name of a guy, we go out and swab him, and then, you know, it's a link to that DNA.